2.
And welcome everyone to Singularity University's Exponential Medicine. I'm your host of the Real Years Podcast, Kevin Edwards. And alongside us today, we have Claudio Menegusso, the USA Managing Director of Brain4Care. Claudio, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting us.
So we're here in Coronado, California. We've had a lot of doctors, a lot of experts, a lot of entrepreneurs on the show today talking about exponential medicine.
Yes.
What brings Brain4Care to exponential medicine?
So what brought us here, first, we believe that what we do has an exponential potential to it, right? We have an ambition of reaching 1 billion people, right, in the next 10 years. And what we do, right, to reach that is we have a medical device that can expose the pressure inside your brain in a non-invasive way. Currently, the gold standard or most common way to know what's happening pressure-wise inside your brain is an invasive method. You have to drill a hole in your skull and put like a sensor inside of it. So the way we do it, we figured out a way to do it in a non-invasive way that will expose that. And where comes the exponential part of it, right? So we believe, one, it's now much easier, right? Non-significant risk, very affordable. But the relevance of that pressure is very high in the sense because the pressure inside the brain is considered a vital sign, right? And we want this to become, quote unquote, a new one because it's not so spread out and commonly known because it's constrained to very critical cases where you have to drill a hole on your head. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So based on that, we believe on the exponentiality of this because probably 1/6 of the world population has something related to neuro disease, and intracranial pressure is close to that. Does that make sense? So that's why we're over here in exponential medicine. And also, this is the 3rd time we're coming over, so we're glad to be back. And 2 years ago, we were chosen by SU, right, to be part of their SU Ventures because of this exponentiality to our potential.
Very cool. Okay, so brain pressure. I feel like I got a lot of brain pressure, a lot of brain pressure. But what you're saying is if I wanted to go get it checked, I'd have to, take my time, go into the doctor. For some reason, I'd probably get my skull drilled into, and that would not be fun. But what you're saying is with this new technology, it's going to save people not only money, but their most precious resource, which is time. So how does this device work? And what do you think its impact will be on saving human lives going forward?
Good. So I think on the one point, like the way it works, so the principle of operation of this device is that it is based on the fact that with every heartbeat, you have a variation of pressure inside your skull, right? And your skull, it deforms based on that variation of pressure inside of it. So what the sensor does, it captures that expansion of your head, right? And that's something that I would say it was invented by a professor who was misdiagnosed with Parkinson's, when in fact he had what you call hydrocephalus, which is the accumulation of cerebrospinal fluid inside your head. And during this journey, right, of misdiagnosis and treatment, where it's totally curable. You operate, you put a valve that will drain the cerebrospinal fluid, right? He was confronted with the fact from the medical community that they were telling him the only way to measure the pressure inside the brain is drilling a hole. And as a physicist, he said, no, that doesn't make sense. Anything in nature, when you apply pressure to it, it will deform. So then he said, the skull will deform with the variation of pressure inside of it. And then with that, what happened is he learned that there's this thing that is called the Monroe-Kelly doctrine, something that is almost 200 years old, that says when you become an adult, your skull becomes a rigid structure, and as a rigid structure, the volume inside of it is always constant. So that kind of like mindset, I would say I would dare to say the medical community to the fact that, hey, there is a way of monitoring that pressure by the expansion of the skull. So that's kind of like a long answer to say, how does it work? So it's the expansion of the skull, and that's how it was invented, right? And also the application to that, we really believe we kind of know where it starts. We do not know yet where it ends. So like the most classical examples would be hydrocephalus, which is a condition where you have cerebrospinal fluid accumulating on your brain. So it could help on early detection, and when you do post-operation, you can see if the valve is working well or not. So just that in itself is quite big. Also traumatic brain injury, like when you bang your head, right? The problem of having a brain injury with the trauma is that your brain starts to swell. But the swelling of the brain, it's enclosed on a skull. And sometimes you have to literally take pieces out of your skull so your brain doesn't, quote unquote, again, this is my understanding, choke to death, because it's swelling inside something that is squishing it. So you could help detect early if you really have to do that or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so that's
definitely.
TBI. Also have other applications which are cardiac surgery, right? The cardiac surgery, typically when you operate your heart, you have to do extracorporeal blood flow, meaning that your blood flows through a machine, right? Because your heart stopped. So what happens is that when you have to go back, so it's a ginormous shift on your whole, how could I say, blood dynamics, right? But when you go back post-surgery, one of the biggest challenges that they have is to protect the brain, because like the body is getting into a new mode of blood flow, let's say. So this neurocritical doctor in Brazil, what he did, he started using our sensor to follow the waveform and start to treat the patients to make sure that the waveform was a good waveform. So he was trying to protect the brain and not only the heart post-surgery. So there were drastic changes in there, like the ICU time went from 6 days on average for 4 days and a half. So that in itself, from a cost perspective for the whole health, that part of the health system, right? And also neurological problems post-surgery, which is very common because of that. It went from 70% of patients having some problem and went down to 11%. So those are just 2-3 examples of the potential of applications of being able to have insight on your intracranial pressure in such an easy way.
Got it. Okay. So this device, doctors can use for any doctor that's trying to use or measure the brain's pressure as a vital sign, can now use this device instead of having to drill in the holes, so you can prevent disease, understand them more and understand them better. Okay, okay. So what does this device look like? I remember I went to your booth yesterday. I wish you would have brought it over. It looks like a headband almost,
it's a headband.
Right?
It's a headband, so it's a device. It's like the wireless version. So it's a device. It has a pin on it, right? And you just put it on a headband. You put the headband around your head, and then you just tighten it on a snug fit. And then it starts capturing that expansion of your head, right? And then what you see from that is the waveform. So the waveform is the important part. So just like in EKG, right? The EKG that you see, like the shape of a heartbeat, the waveform, it's the equivalent for the intracranial pressure. So you put the wireless sensor, you can see the waveform on an app or a tablet. So that's also a big advantage. You're not locked into a patient monitor, right? You could literally do it even at home, right? Anywhere. And then this app sends all the information to a cloud system that then interprets and chunks that data and gives you back a report. It's kind of like a PDF file that says minute by minute, what is the shape of your ICP waveform, and certain parameters of that waveform is the really important information that you want to have.
And how many doctors, I don't know if you have a statistic, but how many doctors are really measuring this right now and using this as a vital sign?
So right now I would say that before, not that many doctors, right? Because it was an invasive system. Right. So that was kind of like constrained to ICUs, right? And critical conditions. But right now, I would say that what we want is to have more and more doctors, right? Because now it's available. So if you think about on a patient journey, the invasive method is typically constrained to operation/ICU. Okay. Now, we believe that you can have on screening and diagnosis and operation and ICU and post-op and home and ambulances or whatever. So it really unlocks this vital sign to a much broader.
And you could use it in the office because my boss has got a big head.
Yeah.
Because you can see what her
Yeah.
pressure is.
Yeah.
Interesting, Claudio. Well, thanks for sharing that today.
Thank you.
This conference has been a lot around exponential medicine.
Yes.
Obviously, emerging technologies that are helping the adoption of devices like yours. What technologies are coming to place right now that are helping this technology come to fruition and be something that's easy to adopt, maybe even worldwide?
Yeah. So I don't know if I understood well. So like there's a lot of other embedded technologies in our technology, right? So like you have some classic ones like Bluetooth technology for the wireless sensor, but a big part of the technology also is like artificial intelligence.
Okay.
So that's a big part. Because what we believe is if you get to a point where you have enough data with enough people, right, you can start getting into a predictive world, meaning that that's our ambition, right? If we get into, for example, into a point that you have enough data, you could start foreseeing and predicting certain conditions, right? Like in our, like we're from Brazil, like over there, we are already using it, this whole wireless solution, right? And it's really like making a difference. Here in the US, our journey currently is we have a wired version where we have FDA's clearance to market this product in the US. That's something we're really excited about. And then the next step is going to be the wireless version to get that. Then you have to go through the whole process.
Claudio, making a difference, as you just alluded to, is what the best leaders do and what companies that we're seeing are doing all around the world. So the last question I have for you, Claudio, is what is your definition of a real leader?
Well, that's a good... So I think from the bottom of my heart, for me, a real leader, first of all, he is driven by a true purpose. Does that make sense? So I think, and that's something that, you know, we started from that and we live that. We really have a purpose of making a difference. And I think a leader having that purpose and focusing on the purpose, I think he becomes a person that has that is genuine enough and genuinely has the credibility to lead and inspire others. That makes sense. So it's really like, I like to think of a leader of almost like a flip the version. He's a guy that should be servicing his team to allow that team towards a common purpose and vision.
I like it.
Right? And even us as a business, right, we believe that we have this incredible potential, but we are very careful to make sure that this potential does not transform into a driven by money only. Does that make sense? It really has to be a business that has a purpose behind it. That purpose will bring an impact, and that impact has to have an admired profit.
I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
Claudio, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We talked about a lot today. We talked about Brain4Care and how it's created the first ever non-invasive way to measure someone's brain pressure. That was really interesting, your example of the brain being suffocated and constricted when it goes against the skull, and how that can prevent a lot of deaths and along the way. Lastly, you wrapped it up with your definition of a real leader, and maybe having more stakeholder value, and including people in your company as well as your stakeholders as well.
Yes, that's something that we're really, it has to bring benefit to everybody around you, the whole ecosystem.
Just want to thank you again for coming on the show. For Claudio Menegusso, I'm Kevin Edwards, asking you to go out there, bring people together around purpose, and always, folks, keep it real. Thanks, Claudio.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.